This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 12, Episode 15. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network, brought to you by HK. Today is Thursday, November 20th, 2025, as of recording of this episode. And I'm your host, Riley Bowman, joined by co-host Jacob Paulsen.
Yep. And man, I was going to do a Riley is the guy who, but then my brain blanked. I don't know. Riley is the guy who's murdered many deer with his truck over the years.
I was thinking, actually, if I was going to do one for you, it was going to be Jacob's the guy that had a bunch of deer in his neighborhood last night.
And I didn't kill any of them.
You should have, quietly, secretly, with a suppressed,
One
firearm.
would have been a good trophy, but that's frowned upon.
I'm not thinking trophies, man. Just give me the meat. Give me the meat.
Yeah, no kidding. Do need more meat. Venison is muy yummy.
Well, welcome to the podcast, folks. Today, as we mentioned, it's Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving. This is gonna, we're a week out from Thanksgiving as of recording of this, but by the time this publishes, we'll probably be, and you listen to it, it'll be really close to Thanksgiving, if not on Thanksgiving or thereabouts. So, hope everyone has a wonderful holiday of Thanksgiving and that you're able to spend it with those you care most about. Enjoy some time off, perhaps from work, and maybe watch some football, eat some yummy food, whatever that is. I don't know, Jacob, you got any big plans?
Yes, tons. But here's something more entertaining than my plans. My wife is a first grade teacher, and the 6-year-olds in first grade can't spell Thanksgiving to save their lives. So they had a quiz yesterday, and she brought home and was grading the quizzes. And I saw a lot of Thanksgiving with an F. I saw Panksgiving. Those are the most common, for sure. So nice. Happy Thanksgiving to
all. It wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if you gave all adult Americans a spelling test on the word Thanksgiving. It would probably surprise us and demoralize us how many people could not successfully spell it.
I did make both of my teenage children complete the quiz that my wife gave her first graders yesterday, and I'm happy to say that both of them scored an 80% or higher, but neither of them aced it. So there's that, But I'm just not sure if everybody can tell me like the name of the rock where the pioneers, settled, and which the difference between pioneers versus like Puritans, and this colony versus that colony, and who was the captain and who was pretty rough. Though someone when they were supposed to answer Captain John Smith, there was a first grader who wrote Captain Pocahontas, because it's 2 blanks you have to fill in. So there's that.
Nice. Well, fun times in the Paulsen household of the first grade teacher.
Yeah, let's hope that my wife doesn't hear that. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to share that.
I imagine that you will have many more stories coming your way, as well as sickness. I hope that you're avoiding that. But let's get into the podcast. Actually, I'll mention sponsor messages here in a little bit. I think we should get into the content because I think people will see very quickly, a relevance to the sponsor messages. I mean, we usually try to have some relevance, but let's jump right into it. That's kind of how I'm feeling here today. So we're here to talk about defense at the door. What do gun owners get wrong about this? And recently you published an article, Jacob, titled "What 4 Recent Doorway Shootings Teach Armed Homeowners." You share 4 stories, 4 incidents that occurred, all within relative recent history. I mean, I think the oldest one is July, and then you got October, and a couple of them are in November.
Yeah, the July one was timely in the sense that the DA just filed charges.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. So these are recent events, and by the way, I bet if we went to the interwebs and started digging through similar stories, we would find bunches of other examples. But there's a reason why we're sharing these ones in particular here today. And we want to share with you some key lessons and takeaways from these incidents that took place. So the big thing here though is talking about that threshold of outside of the home to inside of the home. Um, do criminals make entry through other means, like through windows? Sure, but probably the most common form of entry is through a door. Uh, I mean, there's less risk for criminals that way. They're not having to break glass and crawl over that and risk, cutting themselves and things like that. And a lot of American households, unfortunately, are not particularly well defensed. I mean, in terms of like actual structural defense
Yeah,
uh,
fortified.
of those doors. And so, just kicking them in and things of that nature is all too common.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
We don't have a really good set of data for this. There's one study that was conducted by actually a home insurance or some sort of insurance company. I can't remember, back in like 2015 or something, that was looking at home invasion statistics. And their study said 85% of home invasions take place through the front door. Now, that's both semi outdated, and their data set is limited to people who are filing insurance claims and things. So you can take that, as gospel, or you can take with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think, it wouldn't surprise me if 85% of home invasions take place through the front door. That seems reasonable.
I would say, just anecdotally thinking through all of the defensive gun use stories, justified save stories we've covered over the years. Yeah, or there's some where people break glass and enter that way. Yeah, there's some, but definitely it's kicking in doors, smashing doors, or it's even trying to get someone to come to a door,
Yeah, ring a bell, knock on the door.
just to get you to open the door, and then they force their way in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, my most tragic door ambush that sticks in my mind. It's not one of the four we're looking at in this episode today, but I just can never ever forget it. Is an incident, and I don't remember how it came onto our radar because it's not a DGU. It's just a straight up murder. But a mom, single mom with kids at home,
mm,
doorbell rings, her door is knocked on. She goes, answers door, opens door, and immediately the attacker comes right in through the door and shoots her. I mean, just comes in guns blazing. So, and as I recall, it was not a domestic incident. Like, it was complete random violence. So yeah, like, it is a vulnerable place, that doorway.
yeah, it presents tactical challenges, and it also presents legal ones for a lot of folks, as we're going to find out as we talk our way through some of these stories. Uh, where do you want to begin?
Yeah, we can go through the stories if you want. However, whatever makes
Yeah.
most sense.
All right, let's jump into the first one here. First one happened back in October, and we're not covering these in a particular date order. It's just how they're listed in your article. October 19th, Richland County, South Carolina. Okay, someone was fatally shot. Do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, so basically what we have is you have a guy who's kicking in a door. Yeah, this is a Sunday night, 10:30 at night, and the shooter says that they retrieved a firearm and shot the man. Now, I actually read two different, or I read like five, but I saw two different phrasings of this from the police. One phrasing said that the man was shot when he tried kicking down the door to force himself inside, and the other one said, that, quote, that the man forced entry into the home. So it's not clear to me if he, um, got into the home or how far he got into the home. But what's clear is in the attempt to force his way into the home, and I think the gist is that the door, broke open and he was entering or about to enter. The homeowner fired, shot, and killed this dude. It's a fatal shooting, and the shooting has been ruled justified. No charges filed. Homeowner is legally free and clear.
Yeah. If I was gonna, not that anybody would hire me for this, but if I was gonna teach a journalism class on reporting, one of the things we would cover is that like words mean stuff and how you say things, especially with self-defense type situations, is really like there's a big difference. Like you're pointing out, hey, one source said dude was trying to kick down the door and got shot. That implies that he got shot like through the door or something like that. And the other report says he forced entry to the home and got shot. Like those are
Suggests he
two
actually
very
entered.
different legally relevant things.
Yeah, it's tough because when you have a guy who coming from a traditional media background, when you're dealing with very large publications, like think like the LA Times, right? The Washington Post and things like that, you tend to have journalists and reporters who are assigned specific topics. So it's like I'm the crime reporter. All I do is report on crime. That's all I stink and do. And I'm the politics guy. I'm politics, and this guy's assigned to sports, and this guy's assigned to the whatever desk. And so that's great. But a lot of these DGUs that we review here on the podcast tend to come from small markets, media markets, right? Where it's like, yeah, in fact, you can tell right away when the reporting gives you the county and not the city. Like when you
Right.
get the Richard, whatever this one was, county in South Carolina, like, okay, probably a small market media wise. And in those cases, yeah, you have journalists who have not climbed up the food chain in their career, quite frankly, and they are covering all sorts of news stories without any sort of focus or whatever. So anyway, a little
Mhm.
unnecessary tangent there.
No, it paints a picture as to why sometimes getting clear information about incidents is challenging when there's not. Yeah, there's an inconsistency in reporting standards, perhaps, but also just a variance in talent of
Well, in
people that
this
are actually
case,
generating the media.
yeah, and in this case, it may not have been the journalist's fault at all. Could have been
Yep.
law enforcement.
Yep.
Two different reports from two different cops who said two different things.
Yeah. Which is why, and that's a that's a great point because most law enforcement agencies have a PIO, a public information officer, whose job is typically to be that one point person of point of contact for media to provide statements on such things. And sometimes you'll get actual sheriffs or or chiefs of police that will take that role, as opposed to the PIO. But not every agency follows good practices as far as how to handle media. And we've seen evidence or examples of that where things are kind of all over the place. Yeah, so and yeah, and of course you can't do anything about someone speaking off the record as well, but definitely I've seen agencies that don't assign that one PIO type person, and you get information here, you get information there, and it's inconsistent. And yeah, anyway.
Unclear. Yeah.
So,
Uh,
but the point here is we had somebody kick in a door, or they were attempting to kick in a door. Uh, Obviously there's not really any good reason to kick somebody's door in. So he got himself shot. He's dead. And the police / investigators looked at this, prosecutor perhaps even, and said, justified shooting. We're moving on.
yep. Yep.
Okay. All right. What's the next one here?
Whitestown, Indiana. I don't know where that is either. All right. Well, I know where Indiana is, to be clear, but I don't know where Whitestown is.
Never heard of Whitestown.
So November 5th in Whitestown, Indiana. What you have in this case is, someone's trying to force their way, or I shouldn't even say that. What you really have from the homeowner's perspective is someone has got a key in the lock and they're trying to get the door open. And the homeowner thinks, I don't know who that is. Maybe there's some knocking. It's not clear if they were knocking, but they definitely had a key, and it was in the lock, and they were sound. You could hear that someone was trying to unlock the door. So the homeowner gets the gun, and quote, from the top of his staircase, fires around through the locked, unopened door, and it strikes the person on the other side who's got the key in the lock. Unfortunately for this homeowner, this is a mistaken address scenario where you have a husband-wife couple who are part of a cleaning business, and they had been, hired to come to this neighborhood and clean a home. They got the address wrong. They have a key to the home they're supposed to be at, so they have it in this person's, lock, and they're trying to unlock it. Don't realize they're at the wrong house, and the woman is shot and killed. She's dead. So bad news, for for this guy. The police specified that there was no sign of forced entry. The front door remained locked and intact. And so now the homeowner is facing voluntary manslaughter charges.
Yeah. This is a big yikes, right? I mean, it's terrible because this man and woman, apparently the cleaning business people, uh, they did nothing wrong. They did absolutely nothing wrong. Getting the wrong address, like that can happen.
Yeah, nothing morally wrong. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, it might not even be their fault they got the wrong address. Like
Yeah,
it
we
could
don't
be
know.
that the person giving them the address gave them the wrong address. Like, they are doing literally nothing wrong. They're just trying to go and do the job they've been contracted to do. And next thing you know, this woman's dead. Like, holy smokes. I can hear, in the Facebook comments section, somebody out there saying, "Well, someone's coming into my house. I'm not asking any questions. Shoot first, ask questions later," kind of thing. And this is where that potentially gets you.
I mean, not just legally, by the way, but morally.
Yeah,
Like I haven't seen an interview with this homeowner, but I gotta believe and I gotta hope that they feel terrible. I
I
would
hope
feel
so.
terrible, right? Like
Yeah,
I would feel terrible that I just killed a woman, a wife and a mother and perfectly innocent person. Like I would feel terrible.
yeah.
And
What's the
yeah.
what's the justification for this? I mean, I can imagine someone would say, "Well, I don't have to wait for them to come through my door and harm me."
Yeah, I think that's a very common comment. This idea of like, well, I mean, because I think the response, like, if I was talking to myself and I see YouTube videos like this where people like film themselves talking to themselves. Anyway, if I was talking to myself, devil's advocate Jacob would say something like, "Are you saying I have to wait until I'm actually getting hit, shot at, stabbed before I can use my gun? Like you saying that I can't cut off the attack. I have to wait until I'm being injured and harmed and stuff. Like, is that what you're saying?" And I know that we'll probably hash all this out in the episode, but that's not totally what we're saying. But to some degree, there is just this element of truth in that because of this kind of situation.
Yeah. Yeah, besides the fact that, like, how do you articulate this? I mean, I get it. Like, I can put myself in the shoes of a person of you're in your home and you hear somebody fumbling with the lock. Now, in my household, I've got a wife and children that could potentially be fumbling with the key and lock, right? So I'm not
Sure.
immediately jumping to the assumption that this is an unauthorized individual trying to, you know, uh, you know, uh, pick my lock or hit it with a bump key or whatever, right? But maybe you're a single dude, or you and your wife are the only ones that are home, and you're only, like the only people that have a key, and to your knowledge, and so I can put myself in the shoes of, hey, somebody's fumbling with my lock. Like somebody's trying to get in my house, and there is nobody on planet Earth that should be trying to get in my house right now, right? So this has got to be
Yeah.
nefarious activity. That someone's trying to come in to do something criminal or illegal, trying to hurt us or whatever, right? And so I can put myself in that frame of mind and picture that and be like, oh man, that's uncomfortable at the very least, and scary for sure, right? And so, it's understandable to be on the defensive of what's going on here, and I'm ready to defend myself. Well, I mean, that's just it. I'm ready to defend myself. And there's lots of options, to different courses of action that person could take here. And the first one that should be happening already is get the 911 call rolling. Uh,
Yeah.
you
And we don't
know,
know if they call 911.
yeah.
In fact, I'll add some context here because, like, maybe a month or so ago, I wrote an article about an incident. This is a fact pattern I track very closely. We have an
Mhm.
article on our website where you can see history of news stories on this topic. What you have happen is these two women are roommates. They're both professors at a local university, and one of them has another home that's a little further away from the school where her husband and three children live. So on weekends she goes home to be with family, and then during the week, in order to have a shorter commute, she shares this apartment with another professor or something like that. So the problem is that she comes home early, like 3 a.m. kind of deal when she wasn't expected to have come home. And not only is the roommate like, hey, no one should be here at 3 a.m., but the roommate's actually got a stalker who's been making threats. So the roommate's gone out and gotten a gun specifically to mitigate the risk of this stalker. And so there's this preconceived like mental frame up. The point I'm trying to make is that now come back to this story we're talking about where the guy fires a shot through the door and hits the wrong address home cleaner. We don't know the deal with this dude's store. Maybe he's been getting threats. Maybe his home's been broken into 5 times in the last 12
Sure.
months.
Right.
Maybe he lives in a neighborhood with gangs and they're always, saying that they're going to come kill him. I just don't know. And so that context is relevant. It also is relevant in trial. Like that, just because someone's been charged doesn't mean they're going to be convicted. So those are things that his attorney should be bringing up because it's all about with my situation, with what I knew, with what was happening, was it reasonable for me to perceive that was an imminent threat?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, context matters. But
Yeah.
What we have, we just have this kind of very generic fact pattern where someone's fiddling with the lock. So I stand up at the top of my stairs. And this, like in my mind, this works really well visually. Riley's been in my home, but from the top of my stairs, I can see my front door. So I can just kind of visualize this idea of like I'm at the top of my stairs, and I just like, oh, someone's fiddling with that lock, bang, and through the door, I'm shooting people. That fact pattern, without any additional context, is illegal and super unethical.
Yeah. We'll continue to break this down, I think, some more further. But I was just thinking, at least using your home as an example, because as soon as you go through the entryway, like things open up in a big way. And so my point to that is that bad guys could come in quite a bit and you still could have the upper hand, very much so, as far as like you could be observing, taking a position of cover, and ready to use force if necessary. And they would have no idea where you're at just yet because there's just too many places to look right off the bat, right? And so we have to understand, like, when people talk about, well, I don't want to wait unnecessarily for the threat to come through and to gain any advantage over me. I want to have and maintain the advantage over them. And there's lots of things that can be done to still maintain the advantage and yet still follow prudent courses of action, legal ones particularly. We'll talk some more about what the law really says about such things, but we're just giving you the facts of the stories right now. Let's move to this. It's funny, I almost thought it was the same story for a second there.
They're both
Whitestown,
white.
Indiana, and then we got White Lake Township, Michigan.
Right.
This one's the one that happened back in July, and then you said that the DA's office or whatever has filed charges now against this homeowner. It happened 1 a.m. Why don't you tell us, give us a lowdown on this one?
So it's going to sound a little bit similar to the last one, but at 1 a.m., I can't remember what day of the week, but the homeowner fires 2 rounds through his, quote, locked and windowless garage door. And what he perceived were 2 thieves trying to break into his garage. So, 1 a.m., I hear noises. I go out. It's coming from outside my garage. I think someone's kind of breaking into my garage door. Grab gun, bang, bang, through the garage door where I perceive these sounds are coming from. And we know that from those initial shots fired, that the alleged thieves kind of flee. They take off running. But we know then he fires additional rounds, presumably through the garage door. It doesn't say otherwise. And from those additional rounds, one of the alleged thieves is shot and dies, and the other one is wounded, injured, and makes a recovery eventually. We also have this little fun tidbit. The homeowner then returns inside to, quote, reload his firearm, and then he returned back outside again. So, which implies that he ran his gun dry. So however much ammo that gun holds, he fired all of them, probably through the garage door. Yeah, just mag dumped. So, yeah, felony manslaughter. That's what he's being charged with.
Yeah. These may very well have been thieves.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
Right?
Alleged.
Seems likely. I mean, now, you didn't get any details on this story if this was an attached versus a detached garage or anything like that?
No, I assumed attached because he's firing from within the garage. So I'm at 1 a.m. So maybe the guy just hangs out in his garage at 1 a.m. Maybe he's working on his
I got
car.
a
I mean,
neighbor that does that.
yeah, sure, could be. But I assume this is a wake up, hear a noise, go out into the garage, hear noises. That's
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's my own perceived.
Yeah. Yeah. But still, again, like we have a situation where we actually don't know what's on the other side of that door, and we are just blasting away,
I
Pew,
mean, for
pew,
all we
pew.
know, he heard voices. Hey man, like, hurry up. Turn on. Unscrew that light bulb. I heard this guy's got great tools in here. I mean,
I like how
so
you're making this up, this
yeah, I'm
dialogue.
totally making this up. But my point is, like, he might have, maybe he had a security. It doesn't say otherwise. Maybe he had a security camera and he was looking on his phone. He was like, holy crap, these dudes are in black ski masks and they're fiddling with my garage door right now. I don't know. Like, all of that is possible. I don't know that it changes the way I perceive this legally, but all that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting story, interesting, unique situation there. But again, comes back down to shooting when we don't know what we're shooting at. And also, again, I think we'll break down the actual law as far as, as well as best we know, it applies to pretty much all of the United States of America. There's some, unique little things here and there, nuanced things, but we'll get into that. But yeah, this is a problem when we shoot inside. Well, let me back that up. What I was saying about the law is inside a dwelling versus outside a dwelling, is different rules we got to play by. So a lot of times. Let's talk about this final story, and then let's do kind of our deep dive and analysis here.
Yeah.
Mid-November, so it's got to be just like the last week or
I think
something.
it was like November 16th or yeah.
That's just a few days ago, dude. So Raleigh, North Carolina. What happened here?
All right, so homeowner says him and his wife and their niece were prepping for bed, right? So I assume this is 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, something like that, and they hear loud banging on the front door. And I don't know what that means. Just says loud banging. So moments later, the door gets kicked in, and an intruder enters the residence. It's not clear to me how far into the home the intruder made it, but the news stories are all very consistent that he entered. That he entered the residence. The homeowner retrieves his firearm and says that he finds the suspect just inside the home. I saw that one on 2 different news stories, just inside the home. So that's very relevant. So the way I perceive this is either we have an intruder who breaks open the door, comes in and hangs out like, nice digs, or the homeowner kind of arrives at that point of conflict right as the intruder's coming through the door. Oh, I hear banging. I'm going to go get the gun. I got the gun. Go back to the doorway. Oh, I wonder if he's going to make it through. Oh, crap. The door broke open. He just walked in. Step, bang, bang, something like that. Yeah, it does specify, too, that the intruder, quote, rushed him.
Yeah.
So, there's some point of like acknowledgement or recognition, like, oh, I'm a bad guy. You're a good guy. Looks like you're holding a gun. I'll come hit you in the head or stab you or I don't know, something like that. And so in that moment of physical rush attack, that's the moment the homeowner fires.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great example. I mean, because what I like about this one, compared to the first story, is that this isn't just breaking into the home, but we actually have threat against a person inside the home. When you say that the intruder rushed him, it's like, okay, these are good examples, in other words, because you got the very first one where it's like, and again, there was a little bit of debate about whether they were actually in the process of kicking down the door or they had just forced their way in.
Sure.
But it just seems to imply in that case that a bad guy enters a home and at that point is shot. This one's, hey, dude entered the home, but now is also rushing at the homeowner who then shoots him. So there's that very clear and I guess you could say clear and present danger. So yeah, good examples here. By the way, I just curious because when you say that charges were filed in this Michigan case, I'm like usually some details start to come out a little bit with such things. So I did a little bit more Googling, And there's some interesting details here. So I'll share this, and maybe I don't know if this changes any of your analysis or not. But this White Lake Township, Michigan case, this guy, there was actually 6 suspects, and they had already broken into his detached garage.
Oh, detached.
Yeah. And he got a security alert on his phone. That's what either alerted him or woke him up. He goes out, hears commotion inside his garage,
Oh,
again,
reverse it.
detached, and shoots through the door of the garage into the garage. That's where he ends up shooting and killing one of the suspects. So interesting details there.
Yep. That is a very interesting detail. Certainly, yeah, that's not what I was envisioning.
Yeah.
I don't know that it changes much of the legal perspective here, but
No, I don't.
certainly,
I agree. I don't think it really changes a whole lot
yeah.
in terms of, and he's facing, like you said, felony manslaughter. But yeah, if anything, I think makes his case look quite a bit worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, so that's an interesting little detail. Let's get into it. Let's talk real quick about the law. Okay. What does the law say about use of force with respect to within the home, on the doorstep, outside the home? Where do we draw lines?
Yeah. There's basically a checklist, right? There's specific things that must be true for you to be justified in using force against other people. And shooting people is definitely a use of force, right?
Yep.
So there's a checklist. And traditionally, like home invasion scenarios are about the most clear-cut self-defense incidents you can have because they tend to check the boxes on the list really obviously or cleanly without
Hmm.
much debate.
Hmm.
But when we start shooting through doors at people standing on a porch, or we start chasing people away and shooting at them in the back as they run away down the street, that's where we start to uncheck some boxes. When we go out to the detached garage and say, "Hey, whoever's in there, you can't have my tools and my stuff," that's where we start to uncheck boxes. So I think that we first need to start with this idea of um, imminence, or if you prefer, we can start with proportionality because really, I think we have to consider that like when someone makes a forced entry into your home, a forced entry. This is not in these stories. We're not dealing with situations where someone like just opened an unlocked door. They didn't, just walk in. They you didn't invite them over for dinner and then they refused to leave. Like these are scenarios where it is forced entry, and in three of these incidents, we could call it perceived or straight up violent force entry. If someone's kicking in a door, forcing the way in through a door, that's very serious. And so, the first question we have to ask ourselves is: do we actually have a threat that's likely or intended to lead to death or serious bodily injury? Like, is there really like some actual threat here that justifies the use of a gun? And I think that answer for me is yes. Like when someone makes a forced entry, they kick in a door. I think that you have a reasonable risk of harm to someone in the home. I think that an average jury would be like, yeah, like if someone kicks in your door, I think it's reasonable to expect that they're going to do you harm.
Yeah.
We have some states, like less than 10, though Riley and I live in one of them, like here in Colorado, that actually have laws that make this really clear, abundantly clear. That basically say when someone makes an illegal entry into the home, in fact, in Colorado, it doesn't even have to be forcible. It could be surreptitious or by stealth. When someone makes a forcible entry into the home, that you have a perceived risk of life, of death. You have a perceived risk of death, legal assumption, of risk of life. So I think that's the first kind of box that's checked here. Is I want to, instead of poo-pooing on the people who maybe are facing some legal charges, we'll start out by saying, hey, if someone kicks in your door and then walks through the now broken and empty doorway, I think you have a legitimate risk of serious bodily injury or death.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and that's a really important thing, and I agree. And that's exactly how I mean, of course, you just mentioned as an example here in Colorado, you shared that, and that's where we both live. And so, but that this is also how I think of it, that if someone is forcing their way into my home, particularly particularly if it's, in the evening or night or early morning hours, like there's an expectation that somebody is usually in a home during those hours. uh not that that's the only, not that that doesn't mean there isn't people other times, and there actually, I work from home a lot, my wife works from home pretty much all the time, right? So, but the point is like, yeah, if someone makes their way into my home, there's an expectation that they're willing to harm people that are inside of it. Uh, but that's where this is really important. Somebody that actually comes into my home, enters into my home, breaks into my home. That's that's clearing, that's cut and dry, right? Like, oh, this person entered into my home, I feel threatened. Okay, versus someone's trying to enter in my home. Now that I'm going to feel threatened by that too, that's for sure. But as long as I've got that envelope of the home still secured, like I'm like nothing's happening to me just yet, right? Now, where the law gets a little bit more gray is, and I say more gray because situations outside the home are not always as clear cut and dry as what they are inside the home. You just basically explained that. Um, but as soon as we're talking about outside of a home, then the legal standard is going to be different in almost every state than when we're inside the home. And that's, I don't know, are you aware of any uh, states where, or jurisdictions where there's anything that at all that specifies things about dealing with the threshold or crossing a
Mm.
threshold or a door actually opening or things of that
So
nature?
yeah, this is a good question. In fact, I would disagree with the way you kind of worded what you said, but yes, there are definitely states that specify in-home versus outside home things.
Hmm.
We have about I think there's 11. I think there's 11 or 12 states that specify that are what we would call castle doctrine states, where you have a duty to retreat, but not when you're in your home. That
Right.
duty to retreat, otherwise, that would apply outside the home, does not apply in the home. So that's an example of states that have to somehow define then what a home is and isn't. And sometimes that's really clear in the statute. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it requires case law. Here in Colorado, we tend to use the word dwelling. Utah likes to use the word habitation,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes you see the word premise. So I think that we have to have some clarity. We'll define that. What qualifies as my dwelling? What qualifies? So those are situations where we start talking about that. Now you said specifically like the threshold. I'm not aware of that specific kind of language, but I don't
Yeah.
think it matters.
Yep.
I think that there are situations where the law does draw a line and say inside a home, a dwelling, a habitation, or whatever, this is different than outside the home. Now, I'll also add that I think generally speaking, there's not really much of a legal difference inside the home and outside the home. We perceive it as being different because some of the legal parameters that are required are just really obvious inside the home. I'll give you an example, which is one of innocence. So in order to be justified in any sort of self-defense, you have to be the innocent party. You can't be the aggressor or the attacker, right? So if we have a shooting out on the sidewalk or
Hmm.
in the street or at the park or at the bar or in the mall, it's going to require some work to figure out who was the innocent party, who was the, well, not always. Sometimes it's quite obvious, right? The guy in fatigues and body armor is probably the aggressor, but sometimes it's not clear. But inside a home at 1 a.m. when I was sleeping and someone kicks in the door, innocence is really obvious. So I think in general, and I'm setting aside the states that have castle doctrine necessity of law, which is about, like I said, I think 11, but I could be off by one or two. And setting aside a couple of weird states like Colorado that has a law that kind of specifically removes the requirement of proportionality when you're inside, when you make an illegal entry into a home. Generally speaking, I think it would be most accurate to say there's really no legal difference inside a home than outside a home at all,
Hmm. Hmm.
as far as self-defense is concerned. What changes is just that the legal requirements get really easy to perceive or to the boxes get a lot easier to check. It's just more obvious.
You articulated it better. That's fine, Jacob. That's what I'm getting at, though. Right?
Yeah.
That's where it is very different inside versus outside.
Yeah. It's just obvious. It's
Yeah,
like,
but here's the other thing is here's what also is different when you're talking about uh, dealing with a threat that has entered your home versus dealing with a threat on the other side of a door. You don't actually know that that's a threat yet. 100%. You don't know for sure, or you don't know who the threat is or where they are or what. I mean, like,
yeah.
if you can't see the threat, like that's very much different than when that threat has now come through the door and they're coming at you or you can see them, right?
Well,
So
here's a contextual thing that might be interesting to consider. Let's imagine for a second that it's not a home, it's a car.
sure.
That you're sitting in the driver's seat of your car. And
Mhm.
now you have a threat outside the car. Your car doors are locked, your windows are up. Here's a situation where you can clearly probably perceive if it's really a threat or not. Is that a cleaning lady or is that someone trying to carjack me? I think
Mhm.
you're going to know looking
Mhm.
through the window of your car. So different from a home, the car is a place where you have a little bit more transparency, presumably. But is it any different legally? Like if the guy's in a ski mask and holding a knife and pounding on my side window of my car, is that different than me in my home and someone's pounding on my door?
Mhm.
It's potentially different in the sense that I do know that person has ill intent. They're holding a knife wearing a ski mask, but I still lack imminence, right? Like we're talking about those requirements, and one of them is imminence.
Mhm. Right. Meaning that as long as that car is still enclosed, fully enclosed, like you're still not imminently in danger. It could be argued.
It could be argued, right? Like all of these legal requirements or really anything legal, you kind of have you tend to have scenarios or situations that tend to be pretty black and white. Then you have tend to have things that are very debatable, which is why we have trials and
Yeah.
attorneys and expert witnesses and juries and all that crap, right? Because if when someone breaks the door open and walks in holding the knife, there's no debate over imminence. It's like like dude's in my house holding the knife. Like the threat is happening, man. Like it is active, or it's about to be active. Like we're going game on right now. Though when someone's pounding on the door, it's much more. I wouldn't say impossible. I just say it's much more difficult to suggest
Mhm.
that the threat is imminent.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Okay. Cool. Cool. Hey, real quick before we go any further, one of the reasons why we're talking about this stuff today is, well, because it's important for you to learn and understand and consider these things from a variety of different points of view, but also to let you know that we have our sponsor today, which is, I guess you could say, ourselves. We have a online video course called Complete Home Defense, which talks about many of these issues and talks about especially the tactical side of things, which we have yet to really break down in this episode. I think we'll touch on that here shortly. But if you want to learn more about how to defend yourself properly in your home, uh, you should sign up for and take the Complete Home Defense course, which you can find at concealedcarry.com/CHD, which stands for Complete Home Defense. Concealedcarry.com/CHD. It's like what, 7, 8 hours long
It's
of
between 8 and
content,
9 hours. Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but it's over 8 hours long.
and it covers a lot of different things, a lot of different issues, scenarios, a variety of different things, all in that 8+ hours of training. Uh, spent a couple hours, or we spent a couple of days filming that. Had a lot of fun doing that, and think it's a pretty valuable resource. So please consider signing up for that Complete Home Defense online course at concealedcarry.com/CHD. Now, if you want to take advantage, I'll give you a little bit of a freebie here if you want to take advantage of it for a time here. You could also sign up for our Guardian Nation program, which would grant you full access to Complete Home Defense, as well as all of our dozens of other courses and other training resources, which are part of our training library that we call Guardian University. Guardian Nation members get full and complete access to all that content, including this Complete Home Defense course. We'll give you a 14-day free trial if you want to just go to concealedcarry.com/14-day, 14DAY. You put in a little bit of information there on the site. It'll automatically renew and kick you off with a paid program if you don't cancel within 14 days. But I'd love to have you consider Guardian Nation membership. But again, you can go to concealedcarry.com/14DAY, take advantage of 14-day free trial, and check out Complete Home Defense as well as all of our other fantastic training videos and resources.
Yipper.
All right, let's continue on here. Going back, using your article as a reference here. So, number one, you basically said here's I think 4 key lessons in your article. Number one, forced entry equals a deadly threat. We basically, I think, covered that pretty well. Number 2, a closed door is still a barrier. Yeah, I think we've touched on that as well. If a door is still, if you still have a solid, secure perimeter and envelope to your home, you're still secure. It's still a barrier. It still takes time for that threat to breach into your home.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing anything. It just
Right.
means that you probably don't yet have an imminent threat.
Yep. And then also number 3, property is not worth a gunfight, and the law agrees. Now, this comes directly into relevance with the story we just shared and the additional details I just provided. The guy that went out to his detached garage and shot through the door, killing one of the suspects, wounding another. He basically went out there to defend his property. Now, another detail I didn't mention to you yet, Jacob. He had his property, garage/home. It doesn't really specify, I don't think, or maybe it does. But he had 2 prior burglaries in the last year.
Yeah, I saw that. His attorney made that statement. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's understandable. Dude's like, man, again? Like, are you kidding me? So that feels exasperating and frustrating and like, I am sick of this kind of thing, right? That's very understandable. But dude literally just went out to defend property with lethal force.
With a gun.
With a gun. Yeah. And what we're saying here is not only is that not legal, the law agrees with that. I know some Texas folks are going to be like, well, but in Texas, but also morally, ethically, I don't think it's the right thing, because you're basically saying, and I know that there are those out there, I've argued with them before, that would say, hey, if you're willing to risk your life to steal my stuff, well, you are choosing to risk your life. And sorry, bro, if something happens to you, that's on you, not me. But here's the thing, you are also complicit in saying that a human life is worth less than your crap. Because I know what all you all have in your garage, in your detached garages. It's a bunch of crap.
Riley, the guy who used to make his living with a bunch of tools that he kept in his garage. So, yeah, it's you Texans probably, by the way, should go actually read the law that you're so fond of quoting, and you'll
Right.
find that it's filled with nuance that doesn't really make it mean what you probably think it means. But even for the rest of us, and probably for you Texans too, what it really comes down to is that you can't defend stuff with a gun. Now, it's nuanced, it's complicated, right? Because let's say I go out to my detached garage because I got a security alert, and there's guys in there trying to steal my stuff. So I pound on the garage door and I'm like, "Hey, cops are coming!" And my wife's upstairs calling 911, and these guys start panicking, and one of them says, shoot him. And I hear that through the door and I'm like, oh crap, like this dude's got guns. And so I draw my gun and I'm like, what's going on? And, guy, runs out of the side door of the garage and points a gun at me. And so bang, bang, I start shooting. And now we are in trial later, and we got a prosecutor who's like, man, you went out there with the intent to shoot these people who are trying to steal your tools. And your defense attorney's up there saying, no, like that's not at all the case. Like the gun only got involved when the threat became a threat against, the defendant, my client, directly against him as a person and his life. That's when right. So these things get nuanced. They get potentially complicated.
Yeah.
But I think the point here simply is, if things go sideways, you better be prepared to articulate if we're talking legally, I think we can come back to the moral question. But legally, you better be prepared to articulate how you were defending yourself or other human lives with that gun,
Hmm.
even in Texas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to be articulated, but yeah, there's a challenge with those kind of things, like the situation you just proposed. Like, imagine you go out. I mean, you don't even have to necessarily be confronting somebody. Like, you're just going out to, hey, is there something going on? Did I lock my door on my garage, or did I forget? Let me go double check that. And in the process, you get surprised, and suddenly you're faced with a deadly threat. Like, that's one thing. Going out there knowingly to deal with multiple individuals who've broken into your garage, um, you're kind of, I mean, you might be legally able to do so, right? You certainly can go and confront somebody that's trying to take your stuff. You certainly are able and legally justified to do so. In fact, you may even use reasonable amounts and degrees of physical force to prevent the theft of your stuff. But tactically, is that wise?
Yeah, probably not.
It's definitely not. I mean, you're opening a whole can of worms, and even if you are now faced with a deadly threat and you got to draw and defend yourself with a gun, uh, I mean, one, you're just the point is you've upped the ante in terms of your personal risk to you personally, like your actual bodily, health and life. Like you just upped the ante in terms of your amount of risk. The other thing, though, too, is that's where situations can start to look gray really fast to a prosecutor or to a jury, is not because you did anything wrong, but it may be difficult for the actual facts as you know them to come out. And it may be easy to paint you into a corner, like you just said. You went out there though with the intent of like, how do you know my intent was? Well, if there's not something that shows clearly what your intent was or was not, like that's where, hey, a prosecutor's willing to make that argument. And if you just stay inside the house and call 911, that's a much safer play, just in so many ways. um yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. I think what we see a lot of, we're always looking at these things in hindsight.
Hmm.
So it's armchair. What is it? What's the word? Armchair
Yeah,
quarterback.
armchair quarterbacking,
Yeah,
Monday
yeah,
morning
that thing,
quarterbacking.
that thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Because in the moment, I think a lot of times these people don't even know they have a threat. It's like
yep.
I think I heard something. Like how many times have any
Hmm.
of us been like, I think I heard something? And it's like, am I going to start calling 911 because I think I
Right,
might have heard
right.
something? Like
Yep.
probably not. Like I'm going to be like, I'm going to go check
Let
and
me go
see
check
if,
it out.
yeah,
Yep.
like did I really, like what is that? And then so you might find yourself in a very bad situation, in a very reasonable way, like in terms of like you didn't really
Yep.
make any tactical mistakes per se, but or at least not grossly tactical mistakes. But poof, like you're now in it. Like that could happen. So I don't mean to oversimplify, even though effectively that's what we always do in
Hmm.
these situations, because we're reading it after the fact with very limited amount of information,
Right.
and so we make assumptions that are the simplest version of the narrative.
But can I make a few suggestions here, though, for folks that because I've been in this situation. I have had. Well, I mean, I've had a window on my vehicle out in my driveway broken before and stuff stolen. I have had unauthorized individuals on my property before. And it's not like I live in a crazy dangerous neighborhood, but there has been a greater influx of some of the criminal element, unfortunately, but it's not. I still don't think it's a dangerous neighborhood. But some advice. Okay, you hear something and you think I should go check that out. Check cameras first. Check through the windows next. Okay, like gather intel before you start barging out the door, seeing what's going on outside. This is stuff I've learned from experience. Okay, uh, gather the intel before you make rash decisions. And I think a lot of people are, I don't know this for a fact, but I think I'm pretty spot on with this, understanding how humans work and how humans do things and how I've seen things develop in other similar stories that we've covered in the past. People are really quick to, what's going on out there? Open to the door. You know, um, play it chill, gather intel through using the resources you have available to you. because that may reveal to you that, hey, okay, here's what's going on, and now you can start making decisions. But when you just run outside to check in to something, like, you start removing options from yourself pretty quickly if you are stumbling into something you're not expecting. I just saw an interesting video the other day, Jacob, and it's not relevant to any of this necessarily. Well, it kind of is, I guess. I think the context of the video, it's a young lady, it's a woman. She goes outside. I think it was her dog was going crazy, is what it was. And so she's like, "What's going on?" And she opens the front door. She goes out on her porch, and she's looking around. Her dog's going crazy, and she doesn't see anything. And the camera is obviously from like a doorbell camera, right? And so that's the perspective you're seeing of all this. And you don't see anything going on at all. She doesn't see anything going on. She turns on the light, and it's a chain on it's a combination light and fan, okay, on her porch. So she pulls the string and turns on the light. And again, okay, lights on, and she's still looking around. Her dog's still going crazy. And then she turns around, and there's a dude on her porch, crouched down in a dark corner. And she couldn't see at all until she turned on the light. And all of a sudden, like, she's between him and his escape. She reacts very quickly and very appropriately. She runs right back into the house, leaves her dog out there. Hey, let the dog fend for itself. But she does the right thing, gets herself back in the house, locks the door. I just saw that pop up, I think, on Facebook or YouTube or something recently, and I was like, yeah, that's a wake up call right there. And that's the kind of thing that so quickly you can find yourself in a not so great situation, and you can start losing options. Okay, the ability to make prudent choices when you just kind of thrust yourself into situations like, hey, my dog's going crazy. Maybe I should check that doorbell camera footage. Maybe it caught the dude sneaking on my porch first. You see what I'm getting at?
Well, yeah, and I mean, like I would have a hard. I just think that the doorbell camera is a good example of something that like basically every home in America could technically have. Like if you have Wi-Fi and a doorbell,
Yep.
then you can have a doorbell camera. Um, if you have a phone that you can download apps, then you can have a doorbell camera, and they're not cost prohibitive anymore. Like I remember when they first came out, and I was like, that's a lot of freaking money, but
Yep.
it's not. I mean, I think it's hard if you care about home defense or personal protection to not justify having a doorbell camera. Like to me, it's like, wow. But yeah, more options means more choices, right? Like
Yep.
more tools, maybe. You have a peephole, you have the doorbell
Yes.
camera, you have motions floodlights. Now, the other thing about the camera too, in addition to just like who's out there, is documentation.
Yeah.
For law enforcement and for potentially, my court case, like documentation is awesome. So yes, certainly in this case, we're talking about that of our four scenarios, that one where the guy exits his home to go confront the sound in the garage. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, could have done better.
Yeah. Hey, your fourth and final point is that you put on the article is, once the threat flees, your justification ends. Going back to the situation in Michigan, with the further details that I got from looking at the story, he did continue to shoot at them as they fled. And that was implied, I think, in what you originally reported as well. You weren't sure if he was just shooting through the door or what, but so that's a thing. But with all of these stories, with all these situations, including the one out of Indiana, the no, not that one. Sorry, I was thinking of with the justified ones, right? Imagine these ones playing out. Like, you got one where the dude apparently breaks in and he gets shot, right? You got the other one where the guy actually rushes at him. But imagine those situations: the person breached into the home, and they were faced with you, and you're armed, and they go, "Whoa, hey, I don't want that. I'm out." Right? As soon as they start fleeing, man, like, that's the end of it. That's got to be clear. Like, people need to understand that.
Yeah, yeah, that's where a line gets crossed when the threat's not happening anymore. And it's really, I think I've said this before, but from a legal perspective, it's really the thing that separates us from law enforcement.
Hmm.
It really is. Like law enforcement gets to make this decision of, hey, we need to prevent their escape. I have an obligation to submit that person to custody. I have an obligation to prevent them from continuing to terrorize the streets and victimizing other people. Um, without a badge, you don't have those duties, you don't have those obligations, and you don't have those legal protections either when you do those things. So, anyway.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. Now, I did want to bring law enforcement into the discussion, but I'm going to save that here. I got a question for you in just a moment. I want to touch on the tactical side of things with respect to dealing with a threat at a doorway.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think we've made it clear that it's not prudent, and it's pretty much never really legally justifiable to just shoot blindly through a door at a perceived threat. It's just a bad idea, right? So then it basically becomes a question of, okay, am I waiting for somebody to come through the door, or am I going out, to check on, to see what's going on? And the tactical thing I want to point out is people who hopefully have heard of the fatal funnel, and the further away you are from a fatal funnel, in this case, a door, we're talking about doorway defense, the better for you. Okay. So if you're dealing with a threat at the doorway, you're basically in the fatal funnel. If you're the one that's stepping through the door, going outside, you are putting yourself through the fatal funnel. And that's why tactically this is such a difficult, really not a good thing to try to deal with threats by going to or through the doorway, because you are putting yourself in that fatal funnel where there's one point of egress, right? Therefore, there's one point where a person needs to be concerned with dealing with you. You want to flip that equation around and make it easy on you. And the way you make that easy is you're not anywhere near the funnel, and you're observing the funnel, and you can deal with the problems that come through that funnel pretty easily, especially if you're armed.
Space buys time.
Yeah.
Right? Space buys time. And so what we see in a lot of these terrible, sometimes lawful, sometimes unlawful, but a lot of these terrible home defense scenarios, a common thread is bad tactics cause a person to put themselves too close to the threat, and then they don't have enough time to make a good decision about how to react.
Yeah.
So that's what happens when I put myself at the door and someone kicks in the door. My threat is on me. I mean, if it is a threat, it might be some. I mean, if they kick in the door, it's probably a threat. But the point is, I've lost all my time because the threat is on me. So space buys time. You purchase time in part by putting more space between you and the threat. The other way you purchase time is by putting cover between you and the threat, right? So, hey, I'm going to come down to the opposite end of the hallway. I'm going to get on, put this wall, from the doorway to the kitchen between me and that hallway, and I'm going to, slice the pie around and wait to see if something comes through that door while I've instructed someone to call 911. Cool. Now I got space and I have cover. I've maximized my time, right? Someone comes through that door and I get to think, process, make good decisions, and decide my course of action.
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much what I wanted to hit on tactics wise. That's just the smart thing to do. So let threats come to you through a fatal funnel, and put your as much space between you and that fatal funnel as you can. And that's going to be your best chance to come out of it successfully and to make the best decisions that you can. Here's the question, though, I wanted to bring into the discussion. I think is worth mentioning, because we were talking about dealing with issues at doorways. We've been talking entirely from the perspective of bad guys trying to break in. Okay, so when is it appropriate to deal with bad guy? I think we've hit on that adequately enough. What if it's not a bad guy, Jacob? What if it's law enforcement? Okay,
The firefighter?
or a firefighter? Sure, it could be a firefighter. All right. I'm going to use the law enforcement as an example, though, because it's probably a little bit more, certainly is more controversial. But and we see lots, we see a fair number of these kinds of incidents that have happened over the years, maybe less so with firefighters. And that is, either you've got, for some reason, law enforcement is showing up at your house, and they may have a justified reason to do so, or it could be that they're supposed to be serving a warrant somewhere else, and they got their information wrong, and that has happened, and it shouldn't happen, and there should be safeguards in place that keep that from happening. But we can't.
It has happened.
But it has happened. So the point is it happens. So let's just imagine dudes are at your door. They're banging on that door. They're basically trying to force their way in. And they may very well be doing that in the case of of certain certain warrants being served, particularly no knock warrants. And again, that's where the controversy comes into play. And we're not here to talk about the controversy, but just here's the thing. What I know for you is that things will not go well if, regardless of if you have justification or not. Okay, because I think that there could be justification made that, hey, I shot because of the following reasons. I thought it was a legitimate threat, right? Um, and to be clear, there have been bad guys that have tried to gain entry into homes pretending they're law enforcement. That is also
Totally.
documented.
Yep.
Okay, so like that's this is a legit concern, right? So point is, you got somebody at the door. They're trying to force their way in, and they're calling out police, police. Okay, right,
Yeah. Legitimate or not.
right, right. So how do you deal with that? That's the question I'm posing.
Yeah, I think this is like your worst case scenario, probably. But I think that all of a sudden, verbality. Is that a
I'll
word? Did I make that up? I might have made that up.
look it up.
Yeah, check,
We'll
see
get
if I
the
made up.
crack research staff here.
Verbality, I think, becomes pretty important. Like this idea of communication. Communication becomes really important. Police, police. You know, if someone's shouting police, police, I'm sort of like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like
Hmm.
back off. I'm armed. Like those might be things I'm calling, or I might say, um, I might, if I got someone, this is one of the reasons why rolling 911 becomes really important early. Because, if my wife's on the phone with dispatch and they're saying they're cops, like that gets really interesting really fast. Well, dispatch like, are we serving a no knock warrant over there in this neighborhood? Like, what is going on? So I think that's a factor. We have seen situations where homeowners have shot cops and been justified in doing so. But them calling out commands certainly limits your options because it's supposed to communicate. But I think that there's other factors you got to consider. There's good guy. We've talked a lot before. Well, I don't know about a lot, but we've had podcast episodes before. We've talked about good guy versus bad guy behaviors with their gun.
Yep.
That there's just things that good guys do with their guns and bad guys don't. Bad guys do. Bad guys point guns everywhere at people all the time. Good guys use ready positions. Good guys use cover. Good guys are in uniform. Like, so those are all things that I think are generally, that you're looking for, trying to determine, is this a valid law enforcement response or not? I think another thing you can consider is that I don't have to confront this person at the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If someone's yelling police and knocking on the door and all this stuff, like, I can retreat into the house. I can find a safe room. I can, give myself more opportunity for communication. And things like that. Certainly, though, all those tactics would just become more important: more distance, more cover, more communication.
What I could tell you is that where homeowners get themselves unalived at the doorway is when they end up meeting law enforcement at the doorway and they have a gun in hand. And so now these situations may be difficult, they may be sticky, but what I can tell you from what I just said is that the thing you don't want to do if faced with what you think is a law enforcement presence at your door is meet them at the door with gun in hand.
Yeah, that's never gone well.
Yeah, because as soon as they, understand that, like, if justified or not, like if they're coming in, they're coming in. Okay, you can sort things out in a courtroom later on, with a lawsuit or whatever. But if they're coming in, as soon as that door comes open and they see person and a weapon in hand, almost always that's going to go very badly for you, right? So in other words, like what you just said, Jacob, and what we just talked a moment ago about the tactical side of this, of the further you can be from the doorway, okay, in other words, creating space, the better. Buying time. If you can use cover, all the better. Okay. So I would give it some thought of, if this is a situation you've found yourself faced with. If it came to, meeting them at the door versus forcing them to force their way in, I would probably choose allow them to come in and do their thing while I'm trying to maintain distance with cover involved, where maybe I can have a weapon close at hand in case this is not a law enforcement officer I'm dealing with. But yet the first thing they see when they come in is not me with gun in hand. So just give that some thought, like how you might deal with that kind of thing. Because again, the picture you don't want to have, like the first view, and I've seen these body cam footages before too, where door is opened, they come in, and you just see a person gun in hand, like that. Just you're gonna get mowed over. That's all I can say. So
Yeah, in fact, I wrote an article. I'm trying to think how long ago it was. I could go look it up, but I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. It was similar to this one we're talking about today, where I saw a series of incidents where cops shot good guys at doorways. I think there were like 3 or 4 of them within like a 3 or 4 month period, and so we wrote an article about it. I can't remember if we did a podcast episode or not,
I
but
know
the
we
point
talked
is,
about something
yeah,
at some point,
at
but
least
yeah,
one or more of them. Yeah, so
yeah,
it does happen. Like,
yes,
and a lot of this comes down to, in fact, we've seen 2 of those incidents where there's basically glass panels on either side of the
hmm
door,
hmm
and law enforcement sees through the
through,
glass that
hmm
someone's coming to answer the door, gun in
yep,
hand,
yep,
like hanging down by the side with the gun in hand. So, I would be frosting those windows, man. I would be, thinking about how, like you said, how do I mitigate the risk of,
yeah.
being seen with the gun?
And again, it's not about whether law enforcement's in the right or wrong with this. I don't
No.
want to make it about that. This is about keeping you alive, so that you can fight. Again, you can fight a courtroom battle another day, but you can't get your life back if you make poor tactical decisions in these kinds of situations. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I think it is a important thing to remind people about as we're thinking about, hey, how are we dealing with defense at the doorway? Uh, Sometimes that means law enforcement might be involved, and so yeah, give it some thought.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else we need to talk about or discuss on this topic here today?
Well, I think we scraped the surface, on a lot of this, both the legal and tactical side. That there's a reason why this course, complete home defense, is over 8 hours long, right? So,
Mhm.
I think if you haven't considered these things, then you got to think about, home security as layers of defense, right? Like, what am I doing with lighting? What am I doing with vegetation? What am I doing to reinforce that door, make it hard to kick in? Do I have multiple doors? Do I have a screen door, storm door? Am I locking those doors? Do I have good
Yep.
locks? Do I have the ring camera or other surveillance, systems in place? What other automation tools, like maybe my ability to get lights on quickly, for example, what are positions of cover I can take if someone's coming through the front door? What if they're coming through the back door? All these things I think become kind of interesting layers of defense. I got a loud and annoying dog. Like, you start jingling a key through the the lock on my door, and there's going to be some seriously loud barking. So,
Mhm.
like, those are just layers of defense, right? So this is not all about the gun. That would, I guess, be my parting thought.
Yeah. Speaking of your dog, in case anybody ever wants to mess with Jacob's house, I don't have to do anything but like step outside of my car when I arrive, and that dog is barking. So anyway,
He's
uh,
right here at my feet right now, keeping my feet warm.
yeah, I wanted to end with, I guess my parting thought would be this. It's actually quoting you from the article you wrote, which is this is why training matters. Not just how to shoot, but how to think, how to assess, and how to make good decisions under stress. I think that's really, really well verbalized. By the way, verbality is a word. Now, the way
Yeah.
you used it may not have been
Dang it.
correct, but it is a word.
Well,
But
I tried.
the way you said that, though, I think that's a great place to leave us, with this episode today is we got to be thinking in and assessing and making decisions, smart ones as gun owners, as homeowners, as defensive minded people. That really is what this kind of stuff is number one all about. Yeah, just shooting the gun and using the gun in defense is one small aspect of everything. But the bigger thing is that we are actually thinking and using our brains. And I can just about assure you, like this guy, for instance, I mean, we've focused in a little bit more on him out of Michigan. He's probably sitting there thinking, "Yeah, I wish I did this a little bit differently."
Yeah.
When you're faced with life-changing legal criminal challenges, you're probably not going, yeah, I'd do the exact same thing again. I mean, I've heard people say that about certain situations before, but honestly, if you have severe repercussions that completely change your life, you're probably going, there's something different that I could have done here, you know. At least that's how, maybe that's just how my brain works, but
Yeah. I would prefer if my 14-year-old daughter doesn't lose her dad for a decade in prison and have to tell everybody he went away for felony manslaughter.
right. Yep. I want to be there for my kids too. It's critical that I'm there for my kids. So anyway, good thoughts here today, Jacob. Folks, again, a reminder of today's episode sponsored by our complete home defense training course. Go to concealedcarry.com/CHD. You can purchase a copy a la carte. You can also just consider joining Guardian Nation. GuardianNation.com is where you can learn more about Guardian Nation. You can also take advantage of the 14-day trial I mentioned earlier in the episode. Concealedcarry.com/14-day, 14DAY. Until next time, Jacob, you want to do the thing, the jingle?
Sure. Train right, train often, train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.